Good morning, my name's Dan and welcome to my polytunnel. So today I'm going to be making a video showing you what you could sow during the month of September. So I've got a variety of seeds here and you can see I've got my cell trays here of multi-purpose compost. Got it all nicely organised here, all that's very much at hand's reach, which is very handy. I have my tags here to mark what I'm going to be sowing, and I also have my permanent marker Sharpie right here. We shall kick the video off today with lettuce. So I've got two varieties here, all the year round and winter density. Both of these I've had good results with in the past, planting them at this time of year. So what I would do is with cell trays such as these, one per cell, I would then put some multi-purpose compost on top, and hopefully within the next few weeks they should germinate no problem. Oriental greens are great to plant at this time of year, so we shall start with Komatsuna Japanese green. So I highly recommend you grow this one. It's fully frost hardy, it's said to be drought resistant, grows very quickly and it's great tasting as well. So Komatsuna Japanese green, definitely put that one on your list. Here we have Santal round leaf yellow pak choi. We have Bekana Chinese salad cabbage, Wongbok Chinese cabbage, organic prize choi pak choi, Santal round leaf yellow pak choi, and you could also plant Mizuna at this time of year as well. So once again, I would plant them in cell trays such as these. So your multi-purpose compost like that, seed in, multi-purpose compost on top, and then water, and they should germinate no problem at all. Turnips. So this variety is purple top milanº. Snowball is another good variety. So I would direct sow these into the ground in drills. So either in the open ground outside, or if you've got a polytunnel or a greenhouse, you could do that, or in a cold frame. So turnips are a great one. You can also eat the tops of turnips as well as the roots. So you may not get large turnip roots at this time of year due to the fact the temperature could drop and the amount of time it's got to grow could be considered less in terms of daylight length, etc. But you could probably get some small roots if you plant these now, and also some nice tops to eat. Corn salad, otherwise known as lamb's lettuce. So this is a great one to grow, fully frost hardy here in the UK, and it's low growing. So if you live in a very exposed location, this could be a good one to grow. You could straight sow it into the open ground, or you could plant them initially in cell trays and then later transplant into the ground. Perpetual spinach, this is a great one to grow now. So the way I would once again grow them would be in cell trays such as these, and then transplant them out at a later date. So they may not get that big if you plant them out now. So what they'll probably end up doing is growing until around November, and then when the days get really short and the temperature drops, then growth can either come to a standstill or be very slow indeed. You can prolong the season a little bit longer if you planted them out into a polytunnel or a greenhouse or a cold frame, so you could try that one with a microclimate. But even if they're small, by the time the growth stops, when spring comes or late winter and it warms up a little bit next year, then they should proceed to grow, and then you can have some nice early pickings of perpetual spinach. Radishes. So radishes are great to plant now. Summer radish, so an example such as French breakfast is a radish I've had good results with in the past. You can get cylindrical shaped ones, or you can get globe shaped ones. Have a look around, different colours, varieties as well. So there we are. Winter radish such as Mooli, or this variety here, Ping Pong. So I would direct sow radish seeds into the open ground. You could grow them in a polytunnel or a greenhouse in the ground, or indeed in a container. So drills and then plant the seeds, and you should get some nice radishes to eat. They can crop summer radish in about 8 weeks, maybe even less if the weather stays warm, so that's good. And you can also eat the tops of radishes as well, so very, very good indeed. Broad beans, so you can plant them at this time of year, but what I often find is if you plant them now, they can sometimes get too big by the time the winter comes. So this sort of size maybe, and then what can happen if you get a hard winter, lots of snow, etc., and hard weather, then of course the plants can proceed to bend over and break. So I prefer to wait until around late October before I plant them, and then the plants are smaller generally by the time the hard weather is here, and you're less likely to get breakage, damage to the plants, etc. So there we are. So if you are going to plant broad beans over winter, Aquadulce Claudia is generally the recommended variety because it's very hardy. So you could direct sow these into the open ground. You could plant them initially in cell trays, probably bigger cell trays than these ones, maybe about this size, and then later transplant them out. or we can direct sow them into the open ground. One thing I have done before is grown them in, say, a 30-litre container, just one seed up against a south-facing wall for the extra heat and protection it can provide, and then that way it will spring into growth next year and the plants can get quite big and you can get a very heavy crop indeed. So you may consider trying that. Onions, you can plant them now. So I had results with a variety called Shenshyu yellow a few years ago. If I remember correctly, that's a Japanese onion. So you can direct sow that into the open ground, or you could grow them in a container. So onions, you can plant them now. Go for a hardy variety. So Shenshyu yellow, very hardy, down to about -18 degrees C, if I remember correctly. Garlic, so you can plant garlic now. Casablanca is a very hardy variety. Once again, if I remember correctly, that's from Eastern Europe, so it's bred for cold conditions, so you might want to look into planting garlic now, variety Casablanca. Land cress, this is a great one to sow. So cress, it's very low growing, so once again, if you're in a very cold exposed region, land cress could be a particularly great one for you to grow. I like it in sandwiches. It's nice and spicy, which I like, and I would direct sow that into drills outside in the open ground. Peas for shoots, you can plant that at this time of year. So I did it before around this time of year with a variety called Oscar, so that worked. You could also maybe try a variety called Meteor, so you can plant them now. You've got to be careful sometimes when planting peas, particularly if you're planting them in the open ground, because mice like to nip the tops off. So once again, I would generally germinate them in cell trays such as these. If you've got it elevated a little bit, less likely a mouse can come up there and nip it off for you. So plant peas into cell trays is my preferred method, and then later plant out once they're a little bit bigger, and hopefully you can have some lovely pea shoots to eat. Spring cabbage, so two varieties I'm growing. The first is Durham Early, which should be ready around late April if sown now, and also the other one is Offenham 2 Flower of Spring. So the way I would initially plant them, once again, would be in the cell trays and then transplant out at a later date. I've got some down here in some containers in the polytunnel here. You could put them in the open ground. Make sure you protect them, because you know, pigeons would absolutely love them, and there may still even be a few cabbage white butterflies around, so be very careful indeed. I'm hoping to get a crop a little bit earlier of those because I've got them here in the polytunnel, and with a nice warm spring, who knows, but Durham Early and Offenham 2 Flower of Spring cabbage. So you could consider planting kale and chard at this time of year. Now, the plants may not make a large size by the time the growth slows down or stops, but even if you do plant them and they don't make much size, you can then wait until the spring, and then when it warms up, you should have some nice early pickings of kale and chard. So varieties of kale, Black Tuscan Kale Nero di Toscana is one I've had good results with in the past, and another one is Westland Autumn, which is a curly kale, and there's also Red Russian kale, which is like a salad kale, many different types. So with regards to chard, different varieties, Ford Hook Giant is a good one, rhubarb chard and Bright Lights, so you could consider looking into those. Once again, I would plant them initially in cell trays and then transplant them out either into the open ground or into a greenhouse, polytunnel or cold frame at a later date. If they're outside, make sure you protect them from birds. So you might be tempted to click off now that I've shown you what you can plant at this time of year, but there's one more that you could consider trying. We'll talk a bit more about that later, but if you can bear it, just if you've got the time to hear me out, I would appreciate it. So what I'm trying to get over to people is to keep planting. Keep your planting bench with things ready that you can plant out at a later date. For example, here I have some chard, some beetroot, some more chard and some lettuce. Here I planted these all in July, and these are plugs all ready to go in if I get some space come up, or if I get a failure, let's say some slugs eat some of my other plants, I've got something ready to go in. For example, you might have a patch like this that you're waiting to get harvests from. So I've got some carrots and beetroot, spinach, etc. here. So these carrots will be coming out soon, as will this beetroot. So that'll leave me a space. So what I could do is then transplant what I've already got ready straight out. So it's basically a way of keeping your time well managed and always having something to pick from the garden or the allotment to eat. Very, very important. So this is one for you gardeners out there who are a bit more daring, those of you who like to take a bit of a punt. So I have dwarf beans here, variety Speedy. So they're said to be able to produce a crop within about 60 days. What's that, 8 to 9 weeks? So if you've got a polytunnel or a greenhouse or a cold frame, that could be an advantage for you if you choose to do this. I couldn't promise you success, if indeed success can be promised with anything in gardening, but the way I would grow these would be direct sow them into a container, something like a 30-litre container, maybe 3 or 4 plants, something like that, or you could put them in cell trays like this and then germinate them and then transplant them out at a later date. So we could get frosts here as early as September or as late as into November, who knows. You've also got to think about where you're living. If you're living more further north, you might want to consider this. If you're living in a completely different country with much earlier frosts predicted, then you might not want to consider doing this. But if you fancy something a little bit different, you've got a polytunnel or a greenhouse or a cold frame, or you live in an area where it stays warmer for longer, then you could have a go at putting dwarf beans in variety Speedy. So hopefully that's given you some ideas of what you can plant at this time of year. Now, I know there are some people viewing my channel from cooler regions. I think there's some people watching me from places like North Dakota, which, if I understand correctly, has a much colder winter than what we've got here. So if anyone wants to chime in down below in the comments section, just write what you're sowing in your particular area, because I'm sure people can learn from it, and that includes me as well. So wherever you are, put it in the comments section and hopefully we can all gain from that. But anyway, if you like that video, please feel free to like it. You can share it with anyone you think may be interested, and if you'd like to be notified of any further videos I put up, please feel free to subscribe. As always, thank you very much for your time. I truly do appreciate it, and I shall see you in the next video.